million Venezuelans voting for this assembly, saying it's actually less than 3.
It is. And people are going to start rioting in the streets.
Was reported to have asked Putin for military support that would help him stay in power.
We will make America safe again. And yes, together, we will make America great again.
And they ignore him. And 8 more years goes by till Bernie himself finally admits to his sons, hey, I've been running a Ponzi scheme.
Does its dominance mean it can use the alliance for its own ends?
Since 1981, bond yields, also known as coupon rates, have just gone down and down and down.
Federal Reserve note will be your biggest financial liability. RTD Live Talk, Thursday, the 5th day of the 7th month of 2018. And so I figure it's time to log on and find out what's happening in your world, what's on your mind tonight, and see how everyone's 4th of July was. I know I ate too much, therefore I couldn't get on last night like I would have liked to. I arrived back home, it was just too bloated and
going up. I mean, it's
types of stuff. So other than that, interested to find out what's going on. Any new viewers tuning in, also to get your thoughts on the recent video I did earlier today in regards to actually I forgot what was I forgot. My mind is everywhere right now. But anyway, so I want to find out what's going on. Got Cassandra, how you doing? Good evening, thanks for tuning in. Pat, hello. Scott, how you doing? And wanting to find out what else might have happened today that I was not in tune with because I didn't have a chance to actually dive into many events happening around the world. And then also the phone lines, 833 Live RTD, give you a chance to call in, share what's on your mind, and go from there. But other than that, the clock is ticking. We have 29 minutes of an open discussion time. So I want to find out what's on your mind, give you a voice to give you an opportunity to share your voice. We got Diamond, how you doing? Interested to find out. We got Bakersfield, California. Welcome, John, welcome. And so I want to find out if we have any overseas viewers. I know in the past we've had a couple people chime in from Asia as well as from Europe. And so we'd love to find out, are there any new developments with the economy in those regions that we don't hear about in the mainstream news on this side of the globe. So other than that, I want to actually start off by getting into some comments. And so that's one thing I don't have a chance to do, is actually to respond to a lot of comments. So I figure I would take a minute to share and to respond to some comments as best as I can. So what I'll do is I'll pull it up right here so you can see what I see. Go through a couple questions or comments or whatnot. And so we got Diamond Heart says, your t-shirts are awesome with a great design, but when I click on the link, it's not clear the name of the colors. Where there are 2 green, I like the dark green. The name to click on is Source Kelly. How would I know which one's dark green? So Diamond, what I'll do is I'll actually reply to you in regards to the shirt colors or whatnot, because the shirt I have, well, I don't have it on now, but there's out of the most recent design of the Shocked by Circumstance, there's only 4 colors there, and there's the dark, there's a light. So the dark one is the darkest one. So, but I'll reply, shoot me an email, and I'll reply to you directly. admin@rethinkingthedollar.com. And then we got a great video from Terry. Says the Fed still has tricks up their sleeve, things that we haven't even dreamed of yet, as they gather in the elite bunker with tanks to the side. So that's in reference to the stronger dollar killing the emerging markets. It says, I agree with your points. Compound inflation is the 8th terror of the world. So that stems from the last conversation I had the other day in regards to compound inflation being one of the great wonders of the world. He said terror of the world. And then we have cryptos is awesome is the answer. We got thanks Mike, New World Order, Order of Chaos, burn the paper, bring in the beast system. Silver is the future. What else we got? Just curious, how many years have you been preaching the crash? So this person here referenced the idea of a lot of commentaries mentioned about the crash is coming, the crash is coming. And that's one thing I've never really bought into, the whole idea of the crash is coming. I believe that like the depreciation of the Federal Reserve note has been a continuous and gradual process. Same way with our monetary system. It's been a constant correction in regards to just seeing the decay of all the financial markets and how everything is being propped up with artificial funds from the central banks and whatnot, and the governments are becoming very desperate in the fact that the political structures are breaking down, as you see what's happening in EU with all the referendums, and as well as this different formation of new parties coming out of the blue. So right now, what appears to be happening in the United States of America, especially with the whole Democratic Party, is that they're seeming to turn their backs on one another, which kind of lets me know that either they have some type of new revitalization they're going to try to pose with the Democratic Party. Especially, I'm hearing a lot about the candidate out of New York, the young lady who's very socialistic minded, to where I believe that the whole goal, of course, is to promote socialism. So I believe that they're going to, the Democratic Party might launch a third party, just my opinion, or rebrand themselves as a socialistic type of party, which is all for the people, when they're going to position themselves to be the primary mediator between the people and so-called our rights, and they're going to use the wealthy as their enemy, or the enemy of all things that are free, supposed to be free market. So just my thoughts. We can chime in on that a little bit more if you guys like. It says having a gold backed dollar is the worst idea in history. That's in reference to a Trump and the new backed dollar I did a while back. It says thank you Lord, I have no car payments and won't for at least 10 years. Yeah, so that's a couple comments there. So I appreciate you guys leaving comments there. And as always, feel free to chime in with your thoughts via questions in the comment section. I'll try to get to them when I can. So let's check in and see what's happening here. Says Spirit King says I'm overseas. So Spirit, you're in Portugal. Now I know that Portugal has been having a lot of issues, as well as the entire EU. Is there anything happening there that might be an isolated event as far as news coverage that we should know about? Because Portugal is a small piece on the coast there, and I imagine that the economy is relatively small, but the debt might be large. So feel free to chime in with your thoughts there, as well as if you want to call in or able to call in, feel free to do so. I would love to hear from you. It says not much news, actually. Fair enough. Concentrating on juicing to protect our health is life-saving, super nutritional, recommended. Very good. I definitely, I do the juicing aspect as well. My wife always loves the blender and all types of concoctions she be putting together, so I do appreciate juicing. We got Anwar from Baltimore. If the dollar was back on gold again, would there be inflation? Home Rocks, good question. So if the dollar was back on gold again, would there be inflation? And so the only point of reference we actually have in regards to having a gold standard or having control of the monetary forces that be, ideally the idea that you can expand the monetary base beyond the amount of gold allocated in the vaults. And so if you look at just based upon history, when we were solely a gold standard, the government had very little opportunity to expand the monetary supply, i.e. the idea of the whole Civil War aspect, which was the catalyst to allowing them to pass the Legal Tender Act, which allowed them to print funny money backed by gold. And so from that point, it went on the paper gold ratio standard, to where I believe it was about I think you could print currency, fiat notes in reference to maybe 40% of having gold to back all that up. And then of course throughout time it dwindled from basically a 90% initially until like a 70 and 40, and to where now we're just completely fiat. So I believe if we were dollar for dollar or ounce for so-called paper, it might work, because you can't expand the monetary supply. And if you can't expand the monetary supply, that means there's no way of increasing the money base, which means that we will be back in a similar situation where inflation will be steady, give or take the amount of gold or silver brought into production or mine rather. So whenever there was an inflation aspect in those days, just because there was some type of discovery of a new mine somewhere, and there was a rush of gold or silver into the money supply base, which then caused some problems because there's more gold and silver available in comparison to the natural resources. So that was the ideal situation back then, but I don't think that we would do that now, just because we got to do something with all this $23 trillion worth of debt that's circulating now, and that is being slowly monetized in fiat currencies by our governments and central banks. So until that's cleaned up and wiped away, or somehow there's a correction or a cleaning of the debt slate, there's no way of actually issuing a new monetary system backed by gold, in my opinion. And I think in this day and age, we don't really need physical gold per se, because most people still wouldn't feel comfortable holding precious metals, because most people couldn't actually acquire gold at a higher or at a greater supply, rather, even though fractional would be ideal. It says Portugal highly dependent on the EU-US economy, and it's not a real driver. Yeah, Portugal. I've never been there. Would love to visit that place. It says any fruit, bunny money, any fruit. So what would happen to the fractional banking? Yeah, fractional banking, Home Rocks, was a tool implemented by the central banking system that allowed them to eventually wean us off a gold standard, because they could then control the money supplies, which is what they were put in power to do. And the mandates that were given back then don't really apply now, because they've overstepped their mandates, by a large sum, in my opinion. And they've actually failed in regards to price stability, as the mandate says that they were supposed to be doing. So how do they arrive at stability? Whatever that means, which I will imagine means stability means constant or fluctuation 1 or 2%, give or take. But from price stability to now 2% inflation per year, which compounding of it in of itself would depreciate your currency. So the fact that no one seems to find anything wrong with that in regards to our representatives, it lets me know that they're all in this game together. Says Pat, says I went to fireworks last night in a tiny royal town. Everyone there was in some form of a government assistance. Very sad. Maybe a couple hundred people in total there. No opportunities in the future. Yeah, government assistance. That one thing. And so that's how central banking has become such a major part of our lives. It's because of the United States government, or Uncle Sam in particular, that whole entity, the entity that's formed from Uncle Sam, has become dependent upon utilizing that independent institution to purchase government bonds, or to filter government bonds through them into the open market, which allows the government or Uncle Sam to fund expenditures, i.e. all the unfunded liabilities and just the entitlements that's come about along the way, increasing our debt obligations. So the government and central bank are working hand in hand. So there's no way of really unwinding that now until there's a complete wiping away of everything that has been normal at this point. So just a little side note there. It says, Mark says it's 3:40 and I'm in Hungarian, and I'm Hungarian and I don't know what I'm doing here. So Mark, so you're in Hungary. You're in Hungary right now. Assume you're from there on business, or what's it like in Hungary? Interested to find out what's going on there. We got Mark, buy some gold, silver coins there in Hungary. That's a funny word, Hungary. Says Spirit King Mike, I believe automation will force us to change something in society, either UBI or enslavement to corporations. But if the economy crashes now, won't it delay the change for maybe 100 years? Spirit King, very good question. If the economy was to, go under right now, I'm sure that the central banking powers that be wouldn't allow it to completely go under right now, because I'm not sure if they have everything lined up as far as what they want to implement. And so universal basic income will be a part of that next round of stimulus that's coming. And speaking of that, help me keep that same thought on stimulus, because I want to share with you a graph and add some comments to that. But I don't think the central banking and the government is actually equipped for this whole crash aspect. So I think they're going to continue to pump this thing up until they completely destroy fiat currencies, i.e. with the hyperinflationary type of environments and the dollar, Federal Reserve note being the last one. And so that's a great question, because I know for a fact the Eastern nations, ideally the BRICS, as well as the AIIB organizations and all those China and Russia-led initiatives out there, they're preparing for the day after and the years after the crash or correction or restructuring. So their economy might be able to pick up a lot easier, because that whole One Belt and One Road initiative, as well as the Shanghai Cooperation Agreement, and you got the Russian Organization Agreement, all those institutions are that will be the future. And so they are in preparation for that time when a crash occurs. So on our end, I'm not really sure what we're going to try to roll out, other than the fact that I know that from prior news sources that the Asian area, a lot of heavy billionaire/millionaire investors, they're investing heavily in the manufacturing base here in the United States of America, which lets me know that they will allow us, they will put us to work, as far as U.S. citizens, back to work. And so, like I've mentioned before, I think there will come a time where goods will say made in the USA, but they're going to be made in the USA at somewhat what will be considered slave wages in comparison to what we're experiencing now. And so, like I mentioned in the past, is that the whole concept of our monetary structure will be completely flip-flop, where everything now says made in China. You go to Walmart, everything says made in China, or some Latin American country, Honduras or something like that, for slave wages, partner French of slavery wise, but well below the average and the necessary hourly wage of what it would take to live in this country at this current level. So you have people making $1, $2, $3 a day or a week or whatever. Those same type of wages will come back here, but at a much more realistic and understandable rate, because if we're downgraded as far as our overall living standards and the economy down to a second world status slightly, that means all those factory jobs especially around my area here in the greater Detroit area of, $30 an hour working at a plant putting together a car, those are going to be chopped in half, if not a lot lower. I can imagine, this is just me talking off the top of my head, but I can imagine a day if we still remain as a motor city capital, car wise, even though I know Ford is shipping a lot of stuff overseas and stuff like that. If it's all shipped back here and we're manufacturing here, it will not be at $30 an hour. So it's going to be, 10, 11, 12 or whatever, in whatever currency we might have or whatever. And we're going to be shipping it over to the One Belt, One Road areas that will probably have a chance to experience that developed world type of lifestyle that we're living here. So that's all my opinion there. And so I actually want to get on the idea of what will come about in this next market correction and the amount of stimulus that will be needed to try to prop this thing up. But I don't think it's going to work, just because you can fool us once as far as thinking that the bailouts and the quantitative easing 1, 2, 3 was for the people, but you won't be able to fool the American public twice when people are actually feeling it in their pockets, and or they end up losing a good chunk of their supposed net worth, which is all tied into their portfolio and their housing. So that leads me to a graph that I made the other day, which has to do with stimulus and where I think what would possibly be needed based upon the current trajectory of now. So here you see this graph of central bank asset holdings, and then you see the key point. Well, where am I at? I'm over here. The key point is right here, this little area. Let me get over there. Come back some. Right there, right up in there. That little spike right there is the Great Recession. And so we can see that prior to the Great Recession, there was a gradual upward trend of central bank intervention just on the whole fractional reserve aspect of the government's printing money, as well as the commercial banks and their reactions with their central banks. And so it was 0809 when there was a market correction and the stock market dropped, almost half or something like that. And subprime mortgage was a problem and everything else. So since then, you look at the trend of all those developed nations. So we have the PBOC, which is out of everybody, they've added almost the most. And then we have the Switzerland National Bank. They've added a lot of money to prop up their Swiss franc. And so we have the Bank of Japan, and every government, all these are the big six, ideally, economies here, and everyone's doubled, tripled, or quadrupled their balance sheet as far as them printing funny money and purchasing real tangible assets, whether it be houses, corporate bonds, the Bank of Japan, stock market. And so imagine what will be needed come this next correction, which was going to be 10 times worse than what we experienced in 08 or 09. just because it was never truly corrected. Nothing was actually solved during that time frame. So now we're going to have to pay the piper in regards to the central banks either doubling, quadrupling their balance sheets to where we can actually see it's about 18 or so trillion that's been brought into existence since in the last decade. They're going to double that, if not double, triple that within, just my opinion, but they're going to double, triple that within, say, a year or so in efforts of trying to keep the financial market stable. And in doing so, we're going to run into a currency issue here, because if you're just printing or buying up every single thing, most importantly, what happened to Federal Reserve, they were able to buy up all those assets from the banking sector and then park that cash there and then pay the commercial banks interest, that little small, I think it was about 0.25% of interest, give or take, back to the banks for their own problems that they created. And so this time they won't be able to park those funds. They're going to have to put those funds into the economy, and then that might come through either direct lending, them being forced to lend to us, the consumers, which would be inflationary, or they may have to lend to us, and then the central banks may have to bail out the people with bail-ins or the helicopter money or universal basic income or whatever else may come from there. So those are all scenarios of what could happen come this next recession / correction. And in my opinion, and I'm sure you can agree, that it's not a matter of if it will happen, it's a matter of when. And the more I study this recession stuff and just begin to really pay attention to different people who say things of this nature, I'm starting to believe that we're currently, and we've never truly been out of, but it's becoming harder to paper over and to monetize out of this current recession we're in. So I believe it will be revealed possibly by the end of this year, give or take this fall. And I was watching a video by my former guest, Michael Pinto, saying that come October-ish, you know, we can experience some type of major shift, which could be the trigger that lead to something like that happening. So just my thought. But I'm rambling on, not answering enough questions. So if anyone want to call in, RTD Live Talk, 833-LIVE-RTD. We'd love to have you share your thoughts on anything I said or whatever is happening in your world. It says, I believe that many of the manufacturing jobs will be produced by the robotic technology making one. Yeah, Delonzo, great question there. So that's another thing. If the Asian, financiers or the wealthy are purchasing all of the real estate manufacturing base here, there will be no need for, so that right there will cut into pay right there, because why would you pay for somebody that you can have an automated robot do that same labor work? So there's going to be a shift, and so that could then play into lower wages, because if all the heavy lifting and the real skilled work can be automated, then what will that leave average person being able to do, like skill-wise? So, yeah, that will be interesting to see how that plays out. It says, I'm a welder in a large auto plant. My department just went from 36 to 24 people because of robots. Yep, and that is unfortunate, very unfortunate. It says, why did Trump start a trade war with China, Canada, EU, and China at the same time instead of one at a time? Man, very good question there. I don't have the answer. I can just guess and hint at the idea that a part of all this the Trump initiative of undoing everything that's been done prior to him is a way of stirring the pot to get all of those nations out there that have been taken advantage of the prior administrations, as well as the Congress push to go the globalism aspect of trying to remove the borders and make us all a unified, work under one governing body type of country. Policies that were implemented with NAFTA, as well as all these trade deals were all done to benefit a very small portion at the expense of the public for a lot of these countries here, as well as to keep the dollar as a primary medium of exchange, because we've been printing unconsciously and sending it overseas and receiving goods. So those days are coming to an end, and that's why I believe the whole Trump trade war stuff is going to be very painful at start, but I believe it's what's needed now to unwind all of the globalistic approach and policies that's been implemented to that has taken away our manufacturing base. It's because of policies that were very pro-world as opposed to strong border, strong country type of philosophies that is what's needed at this point, even though it's going to be painful because we're 20 years into this whole NAFTA stuff, and unwinding that is going to be painful regardless, because now it's about currencies and stuff now. So trade war goes to currency war, which unfortunately might lead to as some people say, a shooting war. It says in 2009, the U.S. government bailed out the banks. John Miller, very good point there. And so that whole quantitative, or QE1, was for the banks. Q2 was for, I think, more of the government, process. And the Q3 was, or I think Q2 was the cash for clunkers, and then Q3 was the government aspect. So if there's a quantitative 4, it's going to have to be double or close to double what they already put into circulation. It's going to have to actually hit the streets so that the public can feel it, because you can't bail out the banks twice and people not pitch a fit and get pissed. So that's just my thought. So what is the year? Why this year though? What's so unique about this year? The unique power. This year seems to be an ideal time, and of course, a lot of people have said this year, every single year. And in prior years, I was always anticipating the fall to be a time where people really, where the markets and the overall global economy's health seems to deteriorate as every government, or the United States government, kind of ends their fiscal year and need to prepare for the next year, because the fiscal year for our government budget comes in I want to say October or something like that, September, October, and then they're beginning to look ahead at what's needed spending wise for the next year. And that's when our politicians always argue, and we run into that every single year of having to come up with a budget, which we never able to do. So they remove the debt ceiling issue, and we've been doing it every year that I've been following the monetary system in the news. So eventually they're going to have to either abolish the ceiling aspect and just say, hey, we're going to just print and just monetize as much as we can, which will then be very problematic for our partners that are receiving all those debt instruments. They're not going to just receive, they already been receiving paper and bonds issued by nothing, knowing that they can't be repaid. But if you're on the receiving end and you're sending manufactured goods and your people are slaving at producing for a country that's sending you empty sheets of paper at the end of the day, you're going to have a problem with that. So we won't be able to do that much longer. And that happens around the fall. And then, like always, there's some type of either a banking situation, or we have the political primary situation coming. And so there's the Democratic Party's, very shooken right now on everything Trump's doing. And so you got the political party rift that's going to come. So somehow, some way, one of them are going to bump heads, and it could be a problem. But time will tell. Which, at the end of the day, gives you a chance to better prepare yourself, as well as to try to share information with as many people as you can, because you know that eventually something will happen. And so if it doesn't happen this fall, great. But if it did, you were forewarned in the sense of what could have been. It says, always smart to at least contribute your company 401k match and max out your Roth IRA, but gold and silver looks extremely cheap right now. I like the physical and the mining companies at these levels. Poker 1989. And so one of the things that I've mentioned in prior chit chats is that based upon your philosophy and your thought process on conventional financial information, and so prior to 08-09, when monetary policy was not heavily influential of our current financial realm, investing in mainstream assets or vehicles, financial vehicles, 401ks, Roths, all that stuff was great. And so this is just my opinion. Of course, I'm not a financial advisor, can't give you any type of whatever, just based upon what has happened and what the ideal mind frame seems to be for a lot of people in the alternative media world, is that 401ks, Roths, all those vehicles, financial instruments produced by the leading financial companies, Vanguards, Fidelities, all those companies, are instruments designed to receive your funds, and then it's done through some automated type of process, typically, unless you're a high net worth individual. Then you have someone probably work on your account specifically. But if you're not, if you're middle class or lower, typically you're in an automated vehicle. So that being the case, automated vehicles is usually some type of algorithm that goes according to different measurements based upon this and that all around the world. But here's the real kicker, is that in 08-09, for those that are either have retired or looking to retire at this time frame now, a lot of those individuals, their thoughts, their plans were changed slightly because that major dip in the indexes, the Dow, as well as the NASDAQ, S&P, all those dips that occurred were very problematic for a lot of people who was intending on their principal remaining there during all this turmoil. And so a lot of people woke up to the realization that the stock market and all that, just hold on and go for the ride, don't really work, as the monetary policy implemented kind of has choked out yield from a lot of these pension funds and stuff now. So a lot of these plans now are geared towards making profit in the short term without thinking about the consequences of monetary policy in the long run. So I'll say all that to basically hint at the idea that a lot of people, and if you just search the web, a lot of people believe that this next market correction could wipe away more than half of what was done in the 08-09 recession, because it's going to be that much worse this next go round, which means, depending on your age, you may not be able to afford a 60, 70, 80% correction or wiping away or cleaning a slate of equities which are completely inflated because of monetary policy. And so, as well as your net worth concept of your real estate and your portfolio being heavily measured by financial instruments that are inflated. I'd be willing to bet a lot of people can say that their house, even though you might have made some modifications, but for the dollar amount that is listed at now, if you do Zillow, I would believe you probably are confident saying that it's probably truly not really worth much if you haven't done much to it. But the housing market has been inflated. So it's due for a correction, like, just the normal business cycle. There's booms, there's bust. So now, right now, we're in an artificial boom, in my opinion, due to all that stimulus I just showed a moment ago, having gone into stocks to prop it up, and having gone into real estate, which was where the true inflation is measured at now. There will come a bust period. And when the bust happens, I believe that it could be more severe than most people are willing to really believe in, just because there's only so much more monetary intervention that can take place before it becomes a currency issue. And if that is the case, then you stand to lose a lot investing in conventional financial mainstream instruments, in my opinion. And so, depending on your age group, some people can afford, if you're 30 years old, you can probably afford a 20, 30 year setback if you believe it's going to stay that way or can recover. But if you're 40, 50, 60 years old, you can't afford another correction, especially the type of correction that a lot of economists / commentators are saying is coming. So I just say all that to say, I'm never one to preach financial or the conventional financial information, just because I no longer believe in it myself. So that's me. And Anthony Thompson, if there was a collapse, won't your 401k be hit hard unless you move your portfolio into necessary goods? What is the point? So yeah, Anthony, that's kind of what I was hitting at along the way, is that if there's a market correction, then you stand to lose. Depending on your age group, you may not be able to afford to lose more than half, again, like they did at 08-09, because one thing you don't see about on the mainstream news sources or just alternative media anymore is reports and life stories from all those people that really were wiped out. Like, I found a couple every now and then, but most people who lost a lot, it's unfortunate that you see a lot of people working at Walmart right now. And so a lot of those people who are baby boomers, retirees, they would rather, I'm sure, sit at home doing nothing. But a lot of people, for whatever reason, either they may enjoy working or not, they're working or trying to find work that pays the bills, because they're not able to retire as comfortably, I would imagine, as they would imagine. So I'm actually going to pull this graph up here, because this is one of the graphs I look at quite often as a part of my educational process. And let me see if I can zoom out a little bit. And so, as always, this is all my opinion. I am not a financial advisor or anything of the sort, so I don't claim to be. I just know what my philosophy is and how I choose to gauge and to manage and maneuver my own financial activity. Because I believe at the end of the day, me personally, I feel more comfortable taking a risk with my own than turn it over to a stranger. But that's just me. And so I want to pull this up if I can get this thing cleared out. But to give you an idea of what, I want to zoom in. Let me zoom in. So I'm trying to pull up a graph that can kind of help the point that I'm trying to lay out here. So I might just pull up as is because it's not coming up the way I want it to. And as always, the phone lines is open. I don't think I've missed any calls so far. So I'll go Mac. Okay, so I'll just pull this up as is. Okay, so here to my point. And so here is the Dow Jones Industrial Average over the last, since 19, let me get a little closer here. Since 19, whatever. It goes back, I just typed in hit max, and this is what came up. This is what came up. And so we look at how during normal, conventional times of the industrial boom of our country, slow but sure, gradual, increases to the Dow, which happens to be the measuring tool of all indexes because we're the current reserve currency. But of course, after the 70s, had a little roughness here, 80s here, boom. And then here we have the 87 dip, a little small dip in comparison to the prior dips. So this is the first major shock. 87, well, I think it was Black Monday or whatever they called it. Not sure. I was, I was a lot younger, wasn't involved. And then we have the 08, 09, I'm sorry, the .com correction. Bam. Okay, a little something there. And that one, I actually did the measurement. So if you just look at, man, this is not a very good graph for showing you, but I'll do the best I can. I don't like this. I'm sorry. This will not do us any good. This won't do us any good. And of course, you type in Dow Jones Industrial Average in any other source, it's going to give you a 10-year only. You can't go back and see history, which does us no good. So I want to try to find something a little bit more. Yeah, this is not going to be the one. So let me try Dow Jones. Just because I'm not like, this is just Dow Jones historical chart. And the reason I'm really harping on this is because I really want people to just get an idea, and just by purely guessing, just being very cynical and very pessimistic, if you mind, just for a minute, on what could be and how it'd be hard to be very confident at the current trend given everything that's happened. Okay, so this is better. This is what I'm looking for. All right, so here we have over my shoulder here, same graph, but now I can zoom in a little bit more. But you see how here's the 87, here's the 2000.com, here's the housing subprime, Lehman Brothers, whatever you want to call it. Here was a little 2016 hiccup that was a triggering point for all the high net worth individuals who decided to start liquidating, in my opinion, some of their heavy positions in the stock market, which brought in the Exchange Stabilization Fund and the Plunge Protection Team to begin really propping these things up. Because if you notice, since this 2016 time frame here, it had dropped 300-400 points, but then it's right back up. End of the day, closing bell. Drop. Every month it drops. Every quarter or whatever drops. So now here we are now. So just look at how steep this thing is. It's 25, whatever it is today. I don't know. I don't pay attention to it because it's artificial. And so my thing is, if you are, so let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit. So here we are. So let's just be real here. We got 97. We got this recession here. Look at this recession. Depending on what you were, how old you were, whatever your impact may have been, but it was a little dip. You lost a little something. But some people say, okay, it rebounded. But did it really rebound as far as there's another chart out here in regards to the actual ratio of the funds that were now pumped into that. Could you buy what you could have bought in 2000 with those dollars type of thing? And a lot of people say that no, you really can't, because that's inflation has picked up a lot since 2000. So anyway, next dip here. So we got the 08, 09 recession. And so a lot of the people, ideally the baby boomer generation, is starting to feel this right now. So we got at the very peak at, say, 14,000, September 2007. Everything's good. September, fall, everything was fine. But yet, the official recession started, a lot sooner. But it takes 6 months to almost a year for the statistics and all the bureaus to say, oh, we're in a recession. But bam, it dropped. So we got 14,000 all the way to 7,000. So that's half there. and now we were up to 26, but there was something wrong there. It didn't last. Now we're at 24. So I don't have the ability to draw lines here, but if I could draw a line straight up here and then a trend going down here. So if it touched here, if we were to touch here, it's good to say we could end up, if you're a market technical analyst type of person, you could say that we could end up down, and that's, 5,000 range. So if we'd end up in the 5,000 range, would you have said that it would have been worthwhile to invest in those type of vehicles? But that's just something to think about. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, Mike. This is Josh from Florida.
From Florida. How you doing, my friend?
Good. Hey, I was watching your video earlier, and you were talking about how in the future, how companies and stuff are going to be taking over manufacturing, and that people are going to be working for $10, $12 an hour. Is that what you were saying earlier?
I was hinting at the fact that in this next restructuring or this next economy that might be led by our eastern neighbors, i.e. what's happening with the One Belt, One Road initiative, that we will have a strong manufacturing base, but it's going to be geared towards shipping our products here, which will say made in the USA, over to the eastern area, which would then be more developed world, one world type of status. We might be downgraded a little bit here to that second, possibly third world, give or take. And people and the expectations of salaries might be a lot lower if we were to compare it to what it might be in regards to what second world countries are receiving now. It's pennies on a dollar, which could be $10 or so, give or take. Does that make sense? I think I lost. Hello, are you there? Hello? I think I lost you. Hold on a second. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. So I'm sorry. So I was just saying how in a new system, it could be that way, in my opinion.
Right. Well, what I was going to say is I worked for a company called General Electric where they make General Electric appliances and stuff, and I was there for over 10 years. And it was a union job. Everyone had health insurance and benefits and a pension and all that. And after I was there for 10 years, they got sold to a Chinese company called Harrier. And within a couple months afterwards, they were outsourcing whole departments, and magically people that were making, $28, $30 an hour overnight had to either work for this new company, and you're making $12, $14 an hour with no benefits, no pension or nothing, or you had to find a new job. So I'm just saying the type of stuff you're talking about is happening. It's a real thing that's happening to real people, and it's happening all the time. So I wanted to get your opinion on what do you think is going to happen more in the future, whether it's 3 years or 5 years down the road, and people are going to have to be contracting. Because I'm driving down the street and I'm seeing Winn-Dixie and Toys R Us and Radio Shack and Macy's and big major companies that are retailers that are just going out of business. So, I mean, more and more people are being put out of work. What do you think is going to happen as a result of this? I mean, there's going to be less people to buy loaves of bread and less people to buy cars and houses and all that.
Yeah, and so that's a very good question. And the only answer or only guess I could give you is based upon history and just looking at how shifts have taken place, and especially having seen what life is like in second and third world countries. If we were to be downgraded as the overall society and our expectation, which will be a shock to everybody, where everyone's used to living comfortably, 2 cars, 3 cars, whatever you got. But after this restructuring or reset or crash, people will be very grateful to get anything, especially if they lost everything. So downgrading from $30 to $12 is a shock now, because you're used to, and we have unions that put us in a position where we expect to be paid and we expect whatever. But if you lost everything and you got to feed your family, feed yourself, if someone say, I'll give you $12 job to do this, you'd be like, thank you, because I didn't know where my next meal was coming from, or I was going to lose my house or whatever. So I think the next paradigm, more people will be willing to accept a lot less now, because overall it'll be deemed as being probably a little bit at average or a little bit above damn near poverty. So even more so now. So I think we will adjust our paradigm as time moves on to accept this change, because it's inevitable. To the point where if we were downgraded second world status, you'll be thankful to have 1 car in whatever house you can afford or whatever. We won't have. Think about this. Imagine removing credit and the easiness it is to finance with everything you want. If you couldn't finance nothing in your life, what could you afford? And that would be the position we might be in.
Instead of people driving in, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 cars or, $250,000 houses, if you ain't got $250,000 in cash, how much is that house really going to be worth if you can't finance it on a 30 or 40-year note, right?
Exactly. And so this is one of the benefits that we've had as a leading nation on this planet, is that we've been sending people paper and bonds and treasuries. We've been getting tangible goods. We've been able to borrow. You can finance your phone, you can finance a car, you can finance your house, you can finance a wallet, you can finance your entire lifestyle as long as you can make the bare minimum payment. But what if you couldn't finance? Then you will find out what you are actually able to achieve or accomplish with your paycheck. And most people will be willing to say you couldn't afford what you have now. So imagine in life what you could afford based upon your current income situation now. That might be the level to begin starting at when reality sets in.
Yeah, I'll let you go, Mike. I just have one more question. Can you explain to more people who haven't traveled outside the United States what it's like to live in a second and third world country? Because there's people that's like, hey, I got my Netflix, I got my pizza, I got my soda, I'm good. They don't know what it's like outside the walls of the United States. So can you explain more about what life is like out there and what we can expect when it hits here?
Yes, I can. And so I got another call, so I'll get to that once I get this next caller. But appreciate your call, man. Thanks, and I'll make sure to get that. Thank you.
All right, I appreciate it. All right, so.
Very good question there. Very good question there. Got another caller. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from? Hello? Hello? So I hear them, but they're not there. Hello, are you there?
Yeah. Hello, hi, Mike. Can you hear me?
I can speak a little louder for me if you don't mind.
Okay, how about now?
I can hear you. Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Hey, my name's Fernando. I'm calling from Gem City, Monrovia, California. What's on my mind is everywhere I look, I look up and I see all these billboards about healthcare, nursing, and I actually work in healthcare. And everywhere I look around, everyone's driving BMWs, Mercedes in the parking lot. Mm-hmm. So I remember reading a clip. It's high, report, and it talked about the healthcare imploding,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it be due to, obviously the global currency reset, credit crunch. What do you foresee happening to healthcare once everything gets rolling?
Ooh, boom, that's a good question there, man. To be honest with you,
you like that, huh?
Yes, very good question. And so I haven't I read something or saw something today about Amazon and healthcare, but I didn't have time to dive into it. But I haven't really dived into the whole healthcare aspect much. I focus more so on the economy, knowing that that's one of the overlying, prop things along with our economy. But I haven't dived into it much to actually have an opinion or have formulated one on that, knowing that I know that healthcare right now is extremely overpriced. And so I believe that in the free market,
in there.
Yeah, so I believe that in the free market if insurances was not a very monopolized industry and there was competition allowed, it would be more affordable for more people, and we would probably have much better care. So given some type of correction where people can afford those expensive premiums, the health industry has to adjust if they plan on staying in business, or the government might privatize the healthcare industry like in Canada, and the government will be our primary healthcare provider solely. So that might be the end result, because if people can't afford to pay different types of premiums because of competition, the government might get involved and say, hey, we'll do it for you. And people, if you are older, of course you're more concerned with your health, so you might say, sure, I'll take government paid and sponsored healthcare flat out. But if you're younger, you're gonna be taxed on it, kind of like what happened with Obamacare. So that's my thoughts initially. What do you think about it?
I think Cliff High was right. I mean, I think that I see hyperinflation that's already happening in healthcare. That's why you get all these ever increasing premiums that don't allow people to get raises. Mm-hmm. So I think because healthcare gets money directly from government via Medicare, Medi-Cal, mm-hmm. there's already hyperinflation in the system, and sooner or later all that's going to spread out to the rest of the economy. Yeah. But I do think there will probably be an implosion in healthcare because it's just unsustainable. Right, and
I'm glad you mentioned that. Everything that the government has their hand in, as far as some type of subsidization, is clearly overinflated. I.e., the student loan aspect, healthcare, just senior citizen care in general, is very It's jacked up, man. Like it's unfortunate that the younger generation will be on the hook for all those expenditures and a Great Society plan that was introduced back before the monetary policy was our economy, because now that's due, and it's due on our back and on our watch. So, yeah, it's interesting, man. I appreciate you calling in and sharing your thoughts on that one.
All right, God bless you. Thank you.
All right, have a good one. So yeah, very great question there, man. Like whenever the government has their hands on something, it's unfortunate that it gets inflated away to the point where not too many people can afford it, and so the young generation is taxed heavily. And so I want to actually respond to the caller before in regards to just sharing insight in regards to what it's like to live or exist in a second or third world country. So in my younger years, having played professional basketball, I was in a variety of countries, as well as living in a variety of neighborhoods. And so me personally, having grown up in the inner city of Detroit, I was used to being in areas that will be considered slums and favela type environments. So where even to this day, in visiting countries, I'm comfortable walking through neighborhoods that most people wouldn't feel comfortable walking through. And so, and getting a chance to be in an environment for longer than a week, or give or take a month, you really get a chance to feel the pulse of the neighborhood and the community in general. And two things that stand out right away that I can share that people who might have experience could probably relate to, and then those who may not can probably understand that at the end of the day, when you're in a second or third world country, you're not concerned with first world priorities as far as the need for the latest and the greatest gadgets or comforts. Ideally, here in America, because of credit, we have unlimited opportunity to acquire whatever it is we want, whether we can afford it or not, because we can go out and charge it or finance it or find a way to get it by ideally, reaching into our future with credit and bringing it to the present. And so in a second world, third world country, you don't have that option. So you're not even thinking about acquiring the 2018 Toyota, Lexus, or whatever. I mean, it's not even your mindset, because you have no options or no way of getting it. So whatever you're driving at that moment, you appreciate it because it's all you have. And in a lot of those countries there, unless they are of higher means, they're driving cars that were from 20 or 30 years ago, give or take. That okay, primary example, like in Cuba, third world to the T. I was there a couple months ago, and the cars there, you see the cars, the classical cars, but the cars you don't see, that you don't want to see, are the cars that everybody else has. And those are the cars where you get in the car, there's no regulation and standards on emissions, so they don't have mufflers. It was one time I got in this one car, and it seemed like the exhaust pipe was coming through the vents, because he had none. So we driving in a taxi, paid maybe $1 for a ride, just a normal guy on the streets. That's another thing. Everyone's okay. Not everybody's friendly typically, because there's no jealousy of like that you have more than me, because we're all in this together. It's more family oriented. There's more community based opportunities for people, even foreigners. They're very welcoming and stuff like that. So those are all things that we don't experience here in America. Everyone's concerned with looking over their shoulders over protecting what's yours, because you work hard for yours. So theft is a big major issue here, and don't say it, and I'm saying it doesn't exist there, but it's at a different level. So anyway, back to my point. But the living standards is 10 times different, because you're not consumed with materialism. Here we're a consumption-based mentality where it's all about being comfortable. Outside this world here, outside this country, your comforts are in community, it's in friendships, it's in being able to have a relationship and conversation. Like, people love to talk. Like in Argentina, for example, there's a substance called mate that is like a national beverage in Brazil, Uruguay, whatever, all those countries. And so it's like a community. Like, you get together with a group of people, they're going to extend you a cup of tea called mate, and as a foreigner, you I'm not going to drink after you. Like, that's not sanitary. We're thinking about that type of stuff. They down there, your family, here, have a sip. They get a cup of cola. They have one. This is examples, this stuff from my life. We've had one cup and a liter of Coke. They pass our cup around to everybody just drip. You know, so those type of things are more community-based things we don't have here. So community structure, less commitment to consumption, and just being grateful for what you have are three things that distinguishes first from second and third world countries. So hope that helps at all. And those that might have experience outside of this country here, perhaps you can chime in via chat or call in, let me know your thoughts. But that's just some of the core aspects of the difference between first, second world type things. It says, I have the Australian film, but I don't like the gold pieces anywhere, probably, whatever. Social Security and Medicare are broke. Very true. And so, let me see here. If no one else calls in, we're going to wrap it up because we've exceeded our time limit. But it's been great, as always. It says, the small town I live next to, everyone living here, it seems like is a retired military. All live on their benefits. There's very few jobs around here. Average nice home is $60,000. That's a pad. Just that number alone lets you know that's a small town there, buddy. It says, yes, I want the lion bad, but the premium is too high. Going for the horse with the chains around, whatever. So, anyway, everybody, so I appreciate you guys chiming in. And, you know, we got more people chiming in late. But the open conversation was based upon just what will happen in this restructuring process. And I shared my thoughts on how, you know, I wouldn't bank my entire, I personally have not one that banks my entire thought process or my financial future geared upon conventional, what I believe is outdated financial avenues, ideally stocks, bonds, and all that type of stuff that you're, you know, into, because this next correction, if this is any indicator of this dips, so we got the 87 is not on here, we got all these dips here. So, sooner or later, we're going to have a dip that's going to take us down over my shoulder here, 2, 3, 4, 5,000. And I'm sorry, there will be no real true recovery from that. Even if you know, and if it is a recovery, nominally, yeah, it could get back to 30, 40, 50,000. But if it's because of monetary policy, as far as them stimulating the stock market, they try to shock life back into the stock market with stimulus. That's going to equal hyperinflation, because you can't just flood currency into the stock market and then not drip off into prices of goods and services. And that's going to be the big key. Like right now, inflation is in financial instruments, housing, student loan, all those things where it's labeled as high net worth. People are measuring their net worth with those vehicles. The true inflation, when it drips out of that or is released out of there or goes into the mainstream economy, goods and services, then that's when it's going to become a currency issue, because at that point, they're going to lose confidence and faith in the currency. So we will have a correction and something that will be very unpleasant. But we're drawing to an end. It's been over an hour again. So I told myself 30 minutes is my time frame, but I have such a good time chit-chatting. So over my shoulder here, RTD University. All the information for everything here is down below. I encourage you guys to visit, check it out. And if you find us informative, give me a thumbs up. Share this. Invite a friend. Next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we'll be back here. Got a guest next week talking about AI. So you might want to tune into that next Thursday night. Got a guest who's going to talk about artificial intelligence and the impact of it on you. And so free ebook. 5 reasons to hold precious metals before the next recession. Get that, it's free. Just click download. Webinar coming pretty soon. Actually, I'm working on, I want to do some, I want to begin putting together a keynote presentation with a PowerPoint and actually getting out and actually holding some meetups. So that's going to be my next phase this fall, because this information is not reaching enough people fast enough. So I got to get out in the streets more and go knock on some doors and say, hey, come hang out with me. Come learn this information, because it might save you a couple dollars down the line. So other than that, hope everyone is well. Hope everyone had a great evening. Look forward to continuing to chat with you guys in the future. And other than that, enjoy your night, enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you next week.